Yahweh Abraham Kotori Veres Siciliandre, Shunduro Koli Rapa Siciliandro Kotori Galanturiana. Vraken Melikotori Isma Sepiandro, Uramo Sicievri, Utanur Koyemeri Isma Sepiano. Yahweh God and Creator, we surrender unto you, trusting and knowing that your Spirit is to guide us, strengthen us, and renew us. Yeshua, we thank you that you established a hedge of protection around this time, that you would also reach into the hearts of each individual and hold over them protection, that they would receive only that which you intend within this moment. That all words that come forth by the power of your presence would reach deep within our hearts to move us to a clear understanding of all that you wish revealed. And I want to begin by saying tonight that, as I just mentioned a moment ago, I was awakened at 3:33 last Saturday morning, and this is what came forth in the stream of consciousness, and it is specific to, honestly, the meaning of life. As I've said, that we would be teaching to the deeper things held within Grace Healing, and this honestly answers why we are here and how to function in a high state of blessing through every encounter, even the things that aren't so blessed. So I'm going to record this now for you and also include a transcript for you to review. So be blessed as we open into this time. So Yahweh, I thank you that you will govern the words upon this page to bring forth clarity and wisdom for all people. And again, this is speaking to the nature of why we are here. And one thing we need to recognize is that most of humanity has completely forgotten or overlooked the spiritual aspect of our journey and our role in the restoration of the heavens and the captives lost to the remembrance of God as their origin. And to establish a clear definition so it is not lost in this teaching process, the captives are ethereal in nature and emerge from the spiritual realm known to many as the Order of Principalities. They were named the captives by Yeshua when he instructed us to set the captives free, and are formed or manifested as we define them through our actions and our words. By their nature, they manifest in the grounds we define that are in opposition to the nature and attributes of God, because they only know to manifest existence through the lower heaven, and that comes into play by emerging within a human vessel, us. If we recognize this and combine it with the truth that we were and are first spiritual beings and connected to God's presence without veil, we will remember that we hold authority to release all things of an unblessed nature into the divine for a return to the image God holds for them. The image God holds does not contain any of the lesser attributes or emotions we witness as humans, or the lesser words named over the captives. If we choose to hold the lesser things present within our thoughts or awareness, we are the ones holding them bound here, and bound to the lesser definition they present to us through our actions or the actions of those we love or others upon this earth manifesting lesser attributes. In our blindness or lack of discernment, we become the jailer, the one holding those named as captives by Yeshua, captive in the way we define them, not the manner in which God sees them in blessing. If we choose to agree with them in the form they present, we will be the ones holding them bound in that state. It is so important that we know we have been given the keys to the heavens, and that we can measure our thoughts, words, or actions against the purity and perfection that is God, and then wield this power through surrender, the power we are given through love, and release the captives into God's embrace. All things revealed, good or bad, are to position us in power, not subjection. The greatest power we should aspire to is God's love. Not what we have learned is love, but the surrender into God completely to allow God's presence to be known without any veils or judgments we may hold. God's love is pure and without limit. Human love is defined by the experiences and suffrages established as we were developed in our youth. God love is the greater power, the greater force within creation. It is important to retain or retrain your mind to remember that each and everything we witness upon the earth, which does not reflect the nature or attributes of God, is first spiritual in nature and plainly a gift of revelation, not a weapon of godly punishment or discipline. Once we witness something not of God in ourselves or in another, it is important that we first release all that stirs within us. As we do, we then become more and more of God through surrender, and God's presence transfigures all that is not of his nature. Because, very simply, in any setting that God's presence is known, nothing can hold its form that does not reflect God's will or the blessed nature that his Spirit manifests. This is not a process that we accomplish by our doing. It is a process we witness, accomplished by surrender into that which is God, and the reality of making the God presence known above all that we witness. We must first be in a place of gratitude and thanksgiving for all that is revealed. Then embrace God's presence and become that which is blessed, in order for all things revealed to be returned into their original form in blessing. Please hear me. This cannot happen through intellect. It can only happen through prayer, surrender, and meditation upon our perfect union within God. This is a union formed and extended by grace in each and every breath, not by something you have done or earned, but by grace. It is a reality proven within each breath you receive. The gift of life is present, manifesting, coming forth by God from God. And if it rises within you, life present proves God is present within you. Now, if one were to look into the spiritual instrument of Ho'oponopono, you will see this in the transcript if you want to look it up. It's really fascinating. You'd see a process that emulates this understanding. However, I have yet to see people teaching what is going on beyond the human side of this experience. If we look at Yeshua's instruction, we find that we are to receive all things in blessing. I've had many people ask, how can that be? If we only look at things from a human vantage point, it can't be. And to put it plainly, you cannot if you embrace the human vantage point. You must embrace the overall or universal viewpoint held by God and relinquish the limits that are inherent to the human veil. This can only occur if you embrace the gift you are afforded in every breath and recognize the love that God is and extends to you in every moment of your existence. One must release any mindset or instruction which tells them otherwise. Any mindset that says they have access to God more so than another, or that they must do something other than surrender to gain access. We are all given the same breath of life, and it is grace to reveal the very presence of God, if we are willing to allow this to be known as we develop our deeper union with the one God present within us all. Remember that not only were we once connected to the perfect omnipresence and awareness of God without veil, but we also were as one with all knowledge. Within this gift of grace, as we dwelled in God without veil, please pay attention to this. This is the key to our existence. But as we dwelled in God without veil, we looked into the lower heavens and saw many things of a spirit nature dwelling in blindness of the beauty they originated from, and that the corruption they evidence is not their true nature as they manifest on the earth plane within a human vessel. For instance, in cases of people naming themselves as confused, you've all heard it. Somebody says, I'm so confused, or I get so confused. In this experience, we see a human naming themselves as one of the captives Yeshua described. In this particular case, the spirit of confusion. Once we have witnessed this, or the person speaking this, we are not to embrace the spirit of confusion ourselves, but release it from that moment into the love of God and not allow it to reside within us through agreement in any way, shape, or form. This means that we are not to personally embrace or feel or allow for confusion within ourselves for any longer than it takes to recognize its presence. Then we breathe God's presence into that space. But we also cannot allow for the spirit of confusion within others to be the way we allow our perception of them to be defined. This is key. Even though they show us confusion, we can't allow our mind to see them in that state. We must look upon them through God's view. Otherwise, once we agree with this lesser state they define by their actions, we become part of the spiritual ties which hold the captive, named in this case the spirit of confusion, bound here, and hold it prisoner to our perspective as defined by those under the spiritual veil of confusion. This does not allow for it to be rested before God without ties and become that which it's intended to be in blessing. Our intellectual ties become the hold it gains to remain here manifesting as confusion. Each time Yeshua prayed over someone for healing, he prayed directly to the release of the spiritual influence first. If we recognize a person in the spirit of confusion, and then we agree and produce the feeling of frustration around this, we have now allowed ground for another spiritual captive to lay hold within us as the spirit of frustration, and we have increased the evidence of the spiritual realm and not increased the glory of God or the knowledge of his perfect nature. It is important to remember that all things of a corrupt nature are first spiritual in nature. For instance, when Yeshua came upon someone with leprosy, he prayed freedom from the unclean spirit, and the sores sloughed off the skin. It was not the malady that was prayed for or to, but the spiritual nature which was freed so that healing and God's presence remained. As he taught the disciples, he said, I teach you things of a spiritual nature, yet you do not even understand the things of the earth. This was because they kept looking at the things in the body or world as wrong and broken, and not as a gift of spiritual revelation to be released and utilized as a way toward renewal and revealing God's glory. Yeshua would then speak the breath of God, into the place or spiritual ground once occupied by a lesser form. And God's glory through healing would then be known in the place once corrupted by the unclean spirit. Again, things of a spiritual nature. He also said, specifically, all things of a corrupt nature that manifest upon the earth emerge first from the spiritual realm, the order of principalities. So now we jump back to Ho'oponopono. And I have to be transparent. I'm not versed in this instruction, but I was guided to bring your awareness to this process, which has produced fruit of this very offering and to help draw the parallels necessary for you to understand it fully. One aspect I have heard shared in Ho'oponopono is the initial response to anything of corruption is to be offered up in, I love you. Embracing God and the revelation in that moment. Thanksgiving next. Then seeking forgiveness that the individual even allows for it to exist within themselves as they witness it in others. Think of that. And then release it into God's love. Now, all of you can look up this story, but this is how a doctor of psychiatry, Dr. Len, healed the psychiatric ward and the patients within the ward. Not by treating them, but by releasing the things witnessed in them that did not reflect the nature and attributes of God. If the patient revealed or showed aspects of emotional instability or delusion, Dr. Len did not accept it within himself. He then read the person's file, sought forgiveness for the fact that he allowed to exist, and released each lesser thing into God and embraced God in his place, and then the human walking in the spirit of delusion was freed and able to become a person of clarity in the image of healing. In other words, he would evidence God's glory. And again, Dr. Len never spoke to them, and he transformed and healed every single person within the ward. One aspect also of this specific story is that Dr. Len was able to reveal healing in the institution as well. This transcends the physical aspects of a human because he was doing his role upon this earth. He spoke release and sought forgiveness that he allowed for even brokenness within the building to exist. Issues that couldn't be resolved within the plumbing, within the electrical, within the employees that were constantly sick were healed as well. Because he sought forgiveness, because he as an individual actually allowed for them to exist within him and released them into God's love. And what did this do? It revealed God's glory and magnified the awareness of God above all things. Now, in this case of the institution, however, there is a caveat. This was institutional healing, and the institution does not hold a mind. The institution, once healed, was able to sustain this state because it did not have self-will or ability to return to the familiar spirits it once housed within it. Yeshua said, Yahweh, free them from the familiar spirit that they would know you first. In this example, one must take great care in the measuring of a single son or daughter of God through spiritual insight or release. Going from the institution to the individual, it's important to be vigilant in this. We can release spiritual influence all day long, but if we do not replace the ground once influenced by the captive within with divine love, divine will, and God in wholeness, Yeshua said, many things of like kind will return to this ground. We will then hold these attributes within us and return to the nature of our old behavior or disposition. And again, Yeshua said, if you release anything of a spirit nature or of a demonic nature, you must welcome the presence of God within this place, or many of like kind will return. He's speaking to the spiritual captives in this. He named both spirit and demonic as two separate things. Small s spirit are the spiritual influences over an individual. Demonic influences govern bodies of people or institutions. This includes reaching into the family dynamics and institutions as well as generational origins, governing a body of people. It is very important to remember when you are in prayer for a loved one and see manifesting spiritual ground, you must receive all things rising in blessing. Seek the release into God's love and trust that they can receive divine freedom, and do not speak directly into the demonic they display or the spiritual influence they're governing. Do the work spiritually and release all things into love, and know that you have been given the authority to do so. Even if they return to the familiar spirits, you need not embrace a spirit of worry or hopelessness. You merely continue to recognize that you and the person in question are being permitted to participate in the renewal of the heavens and process of setting the captives free and bring them into the presence of the one that holds the image of them in wholeness. That is God and God alone. Now, one of the things I want to remind you of is there are many teachers out there now that are teaching that we came here to learn about love and how to love. I completely disagree. We came here from perfect love, already knowing love in God's embrace, formed in the living breath of His Spirit. But we came here on a mission, not to learn about love, but to reveal and exhibit love for the sake of all to know of God and the image God holds for creation in wholeness and magnificence. Prior to our arrival in our human form, we were already perfectly connected to pure love. We are here to participate in the restoration of the heavens, and that can only occur if we surrender to the state we once knew without veil, prior to our birth. Pure love, meaning God. This is how things are returned to the highest form, not by our definition or view of a particular encounter, but by surrendering to the universal view of wholeness and purity existent within God and God alone. This is only possible if we release the lesser things we embraced within ourselves or witnessed within others. Remember, King David said, Yahweh, before you formed my flesh, meaning my soul, and knit my bones from the dust of the earth within the womb of my mother, you knew me perfect. As my flesh was formed within the womb, sin, quote unquote, attached itself unto me. The word sin here is referring to the spiritual captives Yeshua later describes and David names as spiritual attachment while occurring within the womb. This is back to that institutional statement of reaching into generational influence. Prior to entering the veil of humanity, Yahweh knew us perfect. He knew us to know His perfect love without limitation. So we knew perfect love, and from that place chose to enter this realm to bring this awareness to the captives that had lost sight of the perfect love we dwelled in. Very simply, please hear this. When we see someone we love exhibiting lesser things through addiction or other like spiritual influences, we must release first all that stirs within us. Not them, but us. Then draw together with another person in full agreement to see our loved one released of all things we see presented in them through spiritual influence, either through discernment or the nature of their actions. Remember, two in the fullness of agreement before the love of God, and it is done upon this earth. In this agreement, the spirits we witness in ourselves or the behaviors of our loved ones through spiritual addiction, denial, deception, etc., will be freed as captives and returned into love. But first we must look within and release what stirs in us. When we see a loved one in addiction, honestly ask yourself, is it stirring fear within me? Does it stir anger within me? Does it stir hopelessness? All these things must be released from within you, meaning us first. Then we engage in that which is to be released within us, and that we witness in the actions of others after we have cleansed ourselves of the spiritual ground within us. And after this done, we will see change in our surroundings and in those we love. However, remain vigilant in our prayer to continue releasing, quote, unquote, the many that return in them. While our loved ones are waking to the remembrance of God as we pray, or possibly their desire to return to the familiar spirit, known as their familiar nature. They walked before you engaged in the prayer for them. There may be a time that they will return to the memory of being whole and waking to the prayer you extend as they remember God's presence within. Eventually, by agreement, they may replace the spirits of the past, the familiar spirits, with God's presence from their own will. But this may be after they peel through a few layers that they have known and walked. When they do wake and join you in the prayer of agreement with clarity, then you will see the healing fully manifest. In the beginning stages of the prayer, you may be witnessing other lesser forms rising and be tempted to believe your loved one is not being healed. Yet I can assure you, they are approaching healing through the prayers and releases you extend. But they may be transitioning through layers of spiritual influence, both spirit level and demonic, from generations past or institutions they have formed allegiance with this. This all may rise before healing fully manifests, and that is okay. It is a gift of revelation for healing. Remain encouraged and continue to receive all things in blessing as a gift of revelation, not subjection. You are equipped with the greatest power in all creation, God's love. But it can only be engaged through surrender to that which is pure love. And if you allow this to flow through you without limit, it will manifest the miraculous in every breath you receive. And please remember that God already sees and knows the completion of all things in their blessed form. The sooner you can relinquish your spiritual veils, your intellectual veils, or the veils witnessed within others, the sooner you will become the result that is God within you and God in all you see and do. And I just want to state to you, for a point of clarification for me, as I was measuring whether I was even supposed to share this message or not, God in his omnipotence, omnipresence, I kind of joke about this because it's like he was just showing off. He woke me up at 3:33 Saturday morning to have me put this out in the Stream of Consciousness writing. And then as I was reviewing it again this afternoon, wondering if I was really supposed to read this for this call, I finished reviewing it, last thing typed, and I look up and it's exactly 3:33. And my brother Dan calls because he says God moved him to call me right at 3:33. So I was confirmed by God that I was supposed to share this with the group, and I pray that you are, each and every one of you, blessed as you review this audio and as you draw to the transcript. If you wish to read it more deeply, it will be included in the email. And we close now in a prayer for the sake of time. Yahweh alimi sel kuntur kabriunta tesmi siele biandro orama koslabribe sisbrieto tukoyebra. Yahweh, we stand in awe, thanksgiving, praise, and worship. We thank you that you allow us to participate in this process of restoration and renewal. For we know that Yeshua spoke the words that he said, that before the completion of this generation, you will see the new heaven and the new earth. And if there is a need for a new heaven, we know that you are describing that as the spiritual realm, that it will be refined, renewed, and made whole as we see the captives released into your embrace, and this earth made new as it is freed from the influences known as the spiritual captives. We trust you, praise you, and worship you as we embrace this holy opportunity to exalt your name above all things of this earth and to recognize the authority that Yeshua holds for all things of a spiritual nature. We breathe as one in you and close this prayer through your most blessed and holy name. Yahweh Elohim, Yeshle Kunturia Menari Yeshua, Abun Solondr Chavinemini, Yahalal Anmaibra Sicilia Monturiyama. Amen.